Costa Concordia, 2012. On January 13th, 2012, when the Costa Concordia, carrying over 4,200 passengers and 1,100 crew members, struck a rocky outcrop near the Italian island of Giglio. The reason? Captain Francesco Schettino wanted to show off, steering too close to the shore in a reckless salute to the islanders. But instead of a dramatic gesture, he got a disaster. The impact tore open a massive gash, flooding compartments and causing the ship to capsize onto its side. The evacuation? A nightmare. Lifeboats were inoperable, passengers panicked, and Schettino himself abandoned ship early, earning the infamous nickname Captain Coward. In the end, 32 people lost their lives, and the ship remained partially submerged for years until one of the most complex salvage operations in history finally removed it. The disaster led to stricter safety regulations in the cruise industry, but the Costa Concordia will always be remembered as a prime example of how arrogance can sink a ship. Literally. The MV Doña Paz, originally built in 1963, was officially allowed to carry 608 passengers, but on December 20th, 1987, it was packed with more than 4,000, yes, thousands of unregistered passengers. The ferry was en route to Manila when at around 10:30 p.m. disaster struck. It collided with the MT Vector, an oil tanker loaded with 8,800 barrels of petroleum. The result? A floating inferno. The Doña Paz was engulfed in flames and sank in just 2 hours. Survivors? Only 26 people. Everyone else was either trapped, burned, or drowned. And to make matters worse, the ferry didn't even have a working radio. And the life jackets? Locked away. Investigations revealed shocking negligence. Both ships had serious safety violations, and the Vector wasn't even licensed to operate. This disaster changed maritime laws in the Philippines, but the scale of the tragedy remains unmatched. SS Kiangya, 1948. A ship packed with refugees, a mysterious explosion, and thousands dead. This was the fate of the SS Kiangya. It was December 1948, and China was in chaos. As people fled the Chinese Civil War, the Kiangya left Shanghai overloaded with more than 2,000 passengers, possibly even more. But just 50 miles into the journey, an explosion tore through the ship. The most likely culprit? A forgotten World War II mine. Within minutes, the Kiangya was sinking. By the time rescuers arrived, as many as 4,000 people were already gone. The wreck was eventually salvaged and repurposed. But the Kiangya disaster remains one of the deadliest maritime tragedies in history. MV Lajula, 2002. West Africa's worst maritime disaster. On September 26, 2002, the Senegalese ferry MV Lajula set sail with over 1,800 people, more than 3 times its capacity. Bad weather hit, the ferry tilted, and within 5 minutes, it was completely upside down. Most of the passengers were trapped inside, and only 64 people survived. The rest either drowned or were left floating at sea for days. Overloading, poor maintenance, and a lack of life-saving equipment made this tragedy inevitable. The government faced immense backlash, but for the families of the victims, justice never really came. MV Seawall, 2014. A tragedy that shook South Korea. On April 16, 2014, the MV Seawall set off for Jeju Island with 476 people on board, including 325 high school students. But there was a problem. The ferry was overloaded with cargo, making it dangerously unstable. Then came the fatal turn. The ship tilted, water rushed in, and within minutes, panic set in. But instead of evacuating, the crew told passengers to stay put. That decision sealed their fate. As the ship sank, only 172 people escaped. The rest, 304 souls, mostly teenagers, were lost. The aftermath was brutal. The captain abandoned ship, the government's response was widely criticized, and South Korea completely overhauled its maritime safety laws. Even today, the Seawall disaster remains one of the most painful chapters in modern Korean history. MV Princess of the Stars, 2008. In June 2008, over 850 people were on board, and instead of staying safe, the ferry goes right into the storm's path. You can guess what happened next. The ship capsized, throwing passengers into the waves. People were trapped inside, the ship sank, and rescue teams couldn't get there in time. It was a disaster, with only a few survivors. So what went wrong? Well, the captain ignored all warnings and sailed directly into the storm. Combine that with awful weather forecasting, bad decision-making, and zero emergency preparedness. And you've got one of the worst maritime disasters in the country's history. This disaster kicked off some serious changes in the Philippines' maritime safety rules. But it was too late for those who lost their lives. SS Eastland, 1915. A ship that sank while still docked. Sounds impossible? Well, that's exactly what happened on July 24, 1915, when the SS Eastland tipped over in a river, killing 844 people. It was supposed to be a fun day. Thousands of Western Electric employees and their families boarded the Eastland in Chicago, excited for a company picnic across Lake Michigan. But the ship had a problem. It was top-heavy. Thanks to new safety regulations after the Titanic disaster, extra lifeboats were added, making the ship even more unstable. And then, disaster. Just minutes after passengers boarded, the Eastland began tilting. Crew members tried to fix it, but it was too late. Within seconds, the entire ship rolled onto its side right next to the dock. People were thrown into the river, trapped below deck, or crushed by heavy furniture. The worst part? It didn't have to happen. Engineers had warned that the Eastland was dangerously unstable for years, but greed and negligence won. To this day, it remains one of the deadliest ship disasters in American history. MS Estonia, 1994. The MS Estonia sounds familiar, right? But do you know what happened to it? Let's dive in. On September 28, 1994, this massive Finnish ferry, originally built in 1980 and known as the Viking Sally, was sailing from Tallinn, Estonia, to Stockholm, Sweden. The night seemed ordinary at first, but things quickly turned deadly. With 989 people on board, including passengers and crew, the ship hit harsh weather. Winds howling up to 40 knots, waves crashing over the decks. It seemed like the perfect storm. Then the unthinkable happened. The bow visor, the part of the ship that allowed vehicles to roll on and off, detached. Suddenly, water flooded the car deck, and the ship started to list. Fast. In just 30 minutes, the MS Estonia capsized, sinking into the icy Baltic Sea. Within minutes, chaos unfolded. Passengers scrambled for lifeboats, but the freezing waters and lack of proper evacuation resources sealed their fate. Only 137 people survived out of 852. This wasn't just another shipwreck. It sparked a complete overhaul of maritime safety. Investigations revealed that the bow visor failure was the culprit, leading to changes in ferry design, evacuation procedures, and the introduction of more safety measures on board. The tragedy shook the Baltic region and became a lasting reminder of how quickly disaster can strike, even to the most modern ships. That fateful night changed everything. And now the MS Estonia isn't just a forgotten tragedy. It's a reminder that in the world of maritime travel, even the smallest flaw can lead to catastrophe. RMS Lancastria, 1940. This one's a wreck that should be talked about more. Way worse than the Titanic, but almost forgotten. The RMS Lancastria, a British ocean liner repurposed as a troop transport during World War II, was evacuating soldiers and civilians from France on June 17, 1940, as the German invasion swept through. But disaster was waiting just around the corner. Out of nowhere, a German bomber spotted the Lancastria near the French coast and dropped 4 bombs. The ship, already loaded beyond capacity with people trying to escape, sank in just 20 minutes. At least 4,000 lives were lost, but some say the number was closer to 6,500, making it Britain's deadliest maritime disaster ever. But here's the jaw-dropper. The British government tried to cover it up. Winston Churchill himself ordered a media blackout, fearing that the news would destroy British morale during the war. So the tragedy was buried, and even today, most people have never heard of the RMS Lancastria.